us move on to the actual symposium with the talks. I think we are starting with Dr. Sushumna Kannan. Dr. Sushumna Kannan is going to talk about Bhisham Sahani's Madhavi. The title is Distortion by Exclusion. Dr. Sushumna Kannan is a scholar in residence at Indica, and she is a specialist in gender studies and Dharma Shastra studies, and particularly Dharma Shastra studies from a gender studies perspective. And she is a very good expert on Itihasa studies, again from gender studies perspective. So with her Hindu gender studies counter, she has countered lots of feminist perspectives, contemporary feminist understandings of our Itihasas, Puranas, and Dharma Shastras, and Vratas, and rituals, and legendary figures like Akkamaha Devi and Goda Devi, Andal. All these, she has given wonderful counters to the feminist representations of these, and she has been a regular presenter in our conferences and symposiums also. She was a co-curator to one of our conferences on Bhakti, which we organized at Bhadrachalam. And she organizes podcast talks on gender studies from Hindu perspective. And today she is going to give a talk on distortion by exclusion in Bhisham Sahani's Madhavi. Over to you, Sushumnaji.
Thank you, Nagaraj. Namaste, everyone. Very happy to be here as usual. Okay.
Yeah.
So because I live in the US and presenting any later would make it really late in the night for me. Organizers at Indica have always found an earlier slot for me in the symposiums, and I'm very grateful for that. So if you're wondering why does she always go first as soon as Nagaraj sir finishes, that's the only reason. Ideally, I would have put my own presentation to the very end of the symposium, but here we are due to time constraints, time zone constraints. Today, I want to talk about Bhisham Sahni's play Madhavi, and I want to compare it with Vyasa's Madhavi. When I was in college, I have a whole tryst with Madhavi actually. When I was in college, I performed a part of Bhisham Sahani's play, especially the last part. It was a mono acting performance. And I absolutely loved Madhavi for the longest period in my life. Anybody who said Mahabharata would immediately see me jumping and saying, I love Madhavi so much. Isn't she amazing? And so on and on and on. I would just gush about her. I was so much in love with this character. But I hadn't read the original. I had only read Bhisham Sahani's play. And this play is very powerful. It has an excellent speech towards the end, very feminist, very powerful, and its contemporary relevance is not missed at all. So that's not what today's presentation is about. It's more about how Vyasa's feminism has been somehow hijacked, overtaken, and distorted by Bhisham Sahani's very contemporary concerns. And in order to achieve his inversion rather, he leaves major parts of Vyasa's Madhavi out. He excludes the last part of Madhavi's story, which is also very important, which without which the story actually doesn't make sense. And by excluding, by omitting this part, he is able to achieve the effect that he wants to achieve for his Madhavi, who is definitely a victim and who is whining throughout the story. And we'll soon see more of that. And Bhisham Sahani's Madhavi was one of the first books I bought. And so you can imagine how much I was in love with this character. And I had assumed that, that this was faithful to the original, but it was not. In fact, it is an inversion of Vyasa's Madhavi. Only years later, when I read the Mahabharata, did I realize what actually Sahni had done with Madhavi's character. So there is a significant scholarly interest in Madhavi, but unfortunately for us, most scholars interpret it as an instance of patriarchal society. So, for instance, we have Daniel Feller calling the story strange. The strange story of Madhavi, her essay is titled, and some other scholars calling it bizarre. She is a usable woman for Das Gupta, and her story is a portrait of a woman whose story has neither nobility nor meaning, according to Chaturvedi Badrinath. Now, he is usually a sympathetic reader of the tradition, but he views Madhavi's story as completely pointless. There is Shalini Shah who will tell you that Madhavi is treated as property, and another scholar, Khangai, who says that there is a hegemony with consent going on in Madhavi's story. These are stock phrases in feminist analyses. And yet another scholar who says that Madhavi is performing sexual slavery, that her body has been objectified, that Madhavi challenges male domination because towards the end she does not want to marry anymore and she goes away to the forest to take sannyasa. And that there is a commodification of women, that there is so much repression in the story, and so on. There is not much variation. You've read one essay and you kind of know what's going on in many of the others. Um, and there's a significant interest in Madhavi in fiction writing as well. There is a Nepali mythological novel called Madhavi. I haven't read that, but I'm curious to know how the plot is going here. But I have read Anupama Niranjana's full-length novel in Kannada, also titled Madhavi. And it is quite clearly a story of exploitation, suffering, and neglect of women. And then, of course, we have Sahni's play. Written in 1982 and first performed in 1984, it's translated into English by Alok Bhalla in 2002, and that's the book that I'm using to do my presentation today. It has 14 characters and 3 acts, and in this story, Galava is someone who cares only about his Guru Dakshina, is extremely selfish and shallow, and cares only about Madhavi's beauty. And Madhavi in this story is in love with Kalava, and she can regain both virginity and beauty after having married king after king. She marries 4 different kings in order to help Galava procure a specific number of horses, a specific kind of horses, and that those horses had to be given to his teacher Vishwamitra as Guru Dakshina. So this is what is going on. So in Vyasa's Madhavi, it's only virginity that she regains, but here it's virginity and beauty, and this is kind of important. I'll tell you why very soon. So in Sahni's Madhavi, she's constantly voicing her opinions and asking her father Yayati if she would be given away like this to Galava in order to marry 4 different kings if her mother was still alive. And here Yayati cares only for his fame and his notion of dharma, which is a very fixed notion in Sahni. Um, Here Yayati is pompous chasing fame. And Sahni even problematizes Kanyadana. And we have a storyteller character who levels a general critique against kings, and especially Rama. Now, Sahni's own leftist leanings are no secret. Everybody knows this. He was associated with IPTA for a very long time. So we kind of know where Sahni is coming from. Um, and in this story, Galava is not simply the Galava Rishi that he is in the Mahabharata. Here he has his own agendas. He wants to become king and the father of a great king, which has been, something that's predicted for Madhavi. It's been predicted that she will produce 4 great kings as sons, and Galava wants a part of this. So he quite literally pimps her to 4 different kings for a short period of time instead of giving her away to one particular king or another, for forever. And Madhavi is unhappy throughout, and Galav also falls for her. He's in love with her apparently, and towards the end we'll see that this love is so shallow. And all the kings, the 4 kings that they interact with, are excessively transactional, and they are distrusting of Madhavi and her, promised, predicted good fortune. And storytellers here take digs at Sita, Savitri, and several other characters from our Puranas. And the kings give her freedom. So the very phrasing in Sahni is phrasing, and this is not there in Vyasa, which makes this so interesting, and troubling at the same time. And Yayati says, kind of admits about his own daughter that Madhavi is fated to be sacrificed. And Madhavi is traumatized by her stay with each king, and she's upset at having to give comfort. So this is clearly an inversion. In Vyasa's Madhavi, she's not upset at all to give up the riches, and she is not traumatized by the kings. They actually have long sessions of lovemaking and years of love, not years actually, but lovemaking in various contexts, and so on. Which is described, their love is described as similar to Shiva's and Parvati's and Rama's and Sita's and so on. Whereas here she's constantly traumatized. In Sahni's play, she is distraught that her sons belong to the king and not to her. And she leaves often without even bidding farewell to the kings with whom she had stayed for near at a time. And Madhavi and Galava often discuss freedom, and she's upset that she's not free. She misses her infant children, and towards the end, Vishwamitra accepts Madhavi as a temporary wife, knowing fully well that she's in love with Galava. So Vishwamitra is also coming across as a very lusty sage here, with who has no regard to Madhavi's feelings. Um, and then towards the end, when Yayati organizes a Swayamvara for Madhavi, Madhavi's children are brought to the event, and Madhavi is horrified that this has happened. And the ashramites might wonder if she's going to choose one of the 4 kings that she's already been with, how is she going to do that? Because she has had a child with all 4 of them. Which child can a mother choose? And these are the questions that Sahni is raising. And Yayati now plans to give Madhavi to Galava himself. And when Galava meets her before the Swayamvara, she has not changed into her youthful form. Now, Madhavi had a boon from a certain rishi that after every childbirth, and so on, she could become a virgin again. Kanya is the word that is used. Virgin is not quite appropriate here, but we'll talk about that a little. So she changes into her youthful form, but this time she does not, because it's Galava, after all, who has seen her as a beautiful person and so on. That's what she thinks, but then Galava has his own designs. Right now, her breasts sag and she's fat, and she does not intend to change her form. And that's when Galava does not want to marry her. He says that he doesn't want to stand in her way of marrying a powerful king, which is, a total lie, of course. And Madhavi sees through it. She understands Galava's intentions, and but Galava is pretty sophisticated. So he says, "Oh, you've been with my guru Vishwamitra. How can I marry you?" Citing the rule that she's now like a daughter. Oh, sorry, sister. Um, and Galava mentions Madhavi's freedom, but she says that she has set him free now, and that she can't bear to have another child for fear of losing that child as well. And although she can regain her beauty, nothing at all can fix her broken heart. So, and walks away. I do think that this is contemporarily relevant because lots and lots of men out there in the marriage market do assess women for beauty, and when women don't have that, women are rejected. So the contemporary relevance of this is not at doubt in my mind, but that Vyasa's feminism, the peculiar nature of Vyasa's, the special and unique nature of Vyasa's feminism is getting distorted is pretty much my only worry here. And because the Mahabharata is a living tradition, and like Nagaraj sir has said, often it's something that we live with, that we associate ourselves with in a deep, deep way. We don't want to see these characters sullied. We don't want to see Vyasa and Vyasa's legacy of his own inclusive project getting sullied. So this is where today's presentation is coming from. The key features of Sahni's play is, of course, that Madhavi is resisting patriarchy, that fathers use daughters, husbands use their wives, and husbands use their daughters as well, and so on. Even sages could use them for sexual purposes, and Madhavi is a mere pawn here. And Madhavi's helplessness is constantly highlighted when Yayati gives her to Galava, by many feminist interpretations, and that that the story shows that society has no regard for a woman's thoughts or feelings, or especially her experience of motherhood, is a large point that Sahni is trying to make here. And that she takes up sannyasa in the end is also seen as a resistance towards patriarchy. But on this, I have a wonderful essay. I know of a wonderful essay by Arvind Sharma on Buddhist nuns. And he examines several Buddhist nuns and concludes that they were not escaping into sannyasa simply to escape patriarchy. But that they really meant to take this. So there's a wonderful counter in Arvind Sharma's essay. I think that everybody should read this essay. And then Madhavi's life is sacrificed to teach Galava a lesson about obstinacy, because Vishwamitra's outrageous demand to bring horses that were white but had one black ear is clearly, an attempt to teach Galava a lesson, because Galava has nothing, but he's obstinate that he wants to give Guru Dakshina. Vishwamitra says, "Give me nothing, go away," but Galava insists on giving him something, and that's when Vishwamitra does this in anger. He says, "Go get me 1,000 horses of this particular nature." And there aren't even that many horses that are like that on Earth at that point of time. He knows that very well. So in Sahni's play, Galava is a misogynist. He's an opportunist. He is an exploiter, and he is not a naive student of Vishwamitra who is also obstinate. What is happening here is clearly ideology is taking over. What Sahani is doing is he's giving us an ideological interpretation of Vyasa's Madhavi, and that then is written down as a play. And like I was saying, the social change or consciousness raising that was attempted through Ipta's plays during this time in the 80s. Were actually cloaks for ushering modernity, for ushering in human rights discourses for ushering in Western thoughts, Western thought, which were all accepted as correct. Thanks to the colonial narratives that existed about India, and because these narratives were accepted as the true descriptions of Indian society at that point of time. Today we have a more decolonized perspective. We are far away from that early surge of self-critique that was going on. Today, we understand better that these leftist narratives were often designed to corrode the social fabric of India. And their intentions may have been noble, but the projects that were undertaken were clearly based in a very colonialist understanding of India, which looked down upon its tradition and heritage. Um, But like I've been saying, in order to achieve this social change, authors like Sahni had to distort so much. And it's hard to believe that somewhere in this process of distortion, in this process of rewriting, they couldn't see the context in which Madhavi was actually placed, that context being dharma. And so on. So it's a little hard to believe that this project was as naive as it's often made out to be. So, removing the context, omitting a discussion of the dharmic nuances, and excluding large aspects of the story of Madhavi is how Sahni achieves his end. So Sahni's play is definitely secular, amoral, focused on rights first, duties secondarily, and his contribution is seen as deconstructive of Hindu myths, whereas in truth it's an adaptation, it's an inversion to suit his own times, Sahni's own times. Sahni received rare reviews, and he's received several national level awards and prizes. We all know this from his biography. And many critics who receive his play very well say that it showcases the plight of contemporary women. But how is this possible? I think that this is possible because whatever frameworks we use to view ourselves with kind of ring true, because we then learn to reinterpret our own lives through these new frameworks. So, in one sense, it's not a surprise that when we use feminist frameworks, all our traditions appear to be masculinist, oppressive, and doing grave injustices to women at every turn. Because these women's rights and duties are now neither entirely. So the other point that I want to make is that the discourses on women's rights and duties that were there in tradition are no longer fully there in the same way, in the same wholesome way in which they once were, but have mixed with modernity and become distorted themselves. It's possible to see even traditional assurances and protections that were given to women as oppressive. So this kind of an ideological takeover is what Sahni's Madhvi represents. Whereas in Vyasa, what is going on is that the story of Madhavi is narrated to Duryodhana by Narada in the Udyoga Parva. And the reason why that is happening is to in order to demonstrate to Duryodhana that he should not be obstinate like Galava. So the critique in fact of Galava is already there in the Mahabharata, and his obstinacy is the point in question, not other parts of his character. So basically, the occasion is to dissuade Duryodhana from going to war with his cousins, the Pandavas. And Galava, though poor, insists on paying Guru Dakshina to his guru, like I said. And Galava and Garuda go to King Yayati in order to procure the resources needed for the horses. And Galava genuinely believes that this is what Vishwamitra wants, and he's pretty innocent there. And by this time, Yayati, who has enjoyed a lot of wealth earlier, we see this in other stories, has now become a very pious king, and he has given away all his wealth and has become extremely poor now. He has almost nothing to give, but he can't refuse Brahmins because that is dharma. The dharma of the king was to give. And so he gives his daughter Madhavi to Galava and says that she has this blessing where she can change her form and so on. And it has already been predicted that she will establish 4 different lineages. And that is a matter of pride for Yayati, that Madhavi is going to establish 4 different lineages. He also praises Madhavi as a follower of Dharma and says that because of her beauty, she will always be solicited by gods, men, asuras alike, and so on. And this again has been criticized by feminist readings of Madhavi's story extensively. This emphasis on beauty. But beauty in this case is a result of merit from earlier lives. And that point is somehow missed here in the feminist interpretations of Madhavi's story. In Vyasa's story, the king will certainly give their kingdoms for her as a bride price, says Yayati, and bride price was considered a valid form of marriage. So Kanya Shulka, sorry, not Virya Shulka, my slide says Virya Shulka for some reason. Kanya Shulka is the correct word. And this is exactly what happens. They go to each king, discuss the transaction that Madhavi will be given to them. And unfortunately, each king has only 200 horses. So they say that Madhavi should stay with them for 1 year and then produce an heir, and then move to another king. And so Madhavi is not entirely voiceless in Vyasa's story. She herself volunteers this information that she has this boon from a sage, and that each time she gives birth, she has the ability to become a virgin again. Therefore, she can marry 4 times. So she herself volunteers this information in order to help Galava, and then Galava accepts. So we cannot be sure that she has been brainwashed, as feminist interpretations would like to believe. She simply is doing her duty, which is to support her father in doing his duty. And in this, she comes across very much like Rama, who didn't want Dasharatha to have uttered a lie, and therefore, goes to such lengths. And Madhavi is similarly, a daughter who does not want her father's ability as king to give, to be to become a lie, and hence she ensures that no matter what, her father has made sure that this Brahmana Galava gets to pay his ranas to Vishwamitra. What Madhavi is doing here in this story is simply pay her rana to her father. That's all. So and the story very clearly says, Narada narrates, of her own will, she became a virgin again and followed Galava after, living with each of the kings for an year. So, and here in this story, like I mentioned, she gives up her riches happily. She's truthful to her words, and she's not addicted to wealth. And this is what is being established by these narrations given to us by Narada. So the third king, Ushinara, has no children, and but still that king is so dharmic. He says, "I'll still have her only for 1 year because I only have 200 horses, and I cannot use the wealth of my citizens in order to procure more sons. Although I would love to do that." So we see dharma in these kings, in these 4 kings, very unlike what is going on in Sahni's story. So The kings have a pleasure with her without there's no sense of embarrassment in in the descriptive verses. So, like I mentioned earlier, they pleasure with her for extensive periods of time, and in different locations. And then finally, when all three kings have given 200 horses each, Galava has 600 now, but he needs 400 more. Then Garuda comes and tells him that there are no more horses. This was just, Vishwamitra testing you, I suppose. So there is nothing to do anymore. Just take Madhavi to Vishwamitra and let's see what happens. And then Vishwamitra, when he sees Madhavi, he feels that this is such an auspicious lady, such a beautiful woman, that I myself will have a son with her. And so Ashtaka is born from the union of Vishwamitra and Madhavi. So in total, Madhavi has produced four sons and established four lineages. And her life purpose has kind of, been met with. In the end, Galava gives permission, so that there has been a transfer of guardianship to Galava from the father Yayati, and now Galava tells her that she can leave, and she goes back to her father Yayati, of course, and he is very, very grateful. Galava is grateful. And then when Madhavi goes back to her father, Yayati arranges for a Swayamvara for her. But this time, Madhavi chooses to marry the forest, as it were. And in the forest, she becomes a Mrigacharini, and she observes diverse fasts, rites, and restraint. And she makes herself light and lives like a doe. She subsists on excellent grass, um, and um, and drinks excellent water that is wholly pure and clean, that is flowing from the streams. So she is not traumatized at all from her experience of motherhood, from her experience of having lived with four different kings, and she's not taking up sannyasa in order to resist patriarchy, but she's doing that out of her own accord, because I think that she has seen what she wanted to see in life, what she was meant to see in life, and she feels fulfilled by all the experiences that she has had. So, in the forest, she practices brahmacharya and earns a great deal of dharma. And not all nature is wilderness, is what Madhavi's story is telling us, because she's actually enjoying her stay in the forest. Meanwhile, Yayati has passed away and has reached heaven. And in heaven, he is confounded by ignorance for some reason. He has insulted the gods and he falls down. He is sent back to earth by Indra because no one can recognize him in heaven anymore. When he falls from heaven, he asks to fall among meritorious people, and he falls to a place where four of his grandsons, that is Madhavi's sons, are performing a Vajapaya sacrifice. Now, all this is what Bhisham Sahani excludes from his play. And when they realize who Yayati is, they offer the merits of their sacrifices to him. But Yayati declines because kings must not receive. And then Madhavi appears and persuades Yayati to receive the merits because these are, after all, her children. And there is a clause in the Dharma Shastras where Putrika daughters, are like sons. And so she says, these are your own grandsons, they are not strangers. And as per ancient ordinances, you can take their punya. So accept half of that, she says. She gives her own punya as well. And then Galava appears and give 1/8 of his punya, and then Yayati ascends to heaven. So basically, um, what Madhavi has done is quite literally deliver her father Yayati from hell, and quite literally she sends him to heaven. And this is what Kanyadana typically is supposed to do for parents. So when a father gives his daughter in Kanyadana, he gets the opportunity to go to heaven. But Madhavi's story has her given away through Kanya Shulka, not Kanya Dana, quite literally. So here we have this reunion of father and daughter, and she literally saves him through the punya that she has earned, um, and sends him back to heaven. But when Yayati reaches Brahma, he questions Brahma. He asks him, I served my subjects for thousands of years. Why did I fall? Then Brahma tells Yayati that you have shown disrespect to someone who is your superior, your inferior, or someone who is in the middle, and you should not do that. And this is a beautiful, you should not disrespect those who are superior, inferior, or in the middle. Such a beautiful ethical message in what Brahma has said here, and this is really Vyasa's entire inclusionary project. When we consider carefully what Vyasa is doing throughout the Mahabharata and later throughout the Bhagavata. Um, so so uh, so this is a beautiful ethical lesson we get. And this is what Narada is hoping to convey to Duryodhana as well, and hopes that Duryodhana does not become as obstinate as Galava has become in the story. So make peace with the Pandavas is what Narada says, and then there is a Phalashruti verse that concludes the story. Whoever listens will gain merit, and so on. So the key features in Vyasa's story is that Madhavi feels extreme fulfillment. She has, of course, paid off her Pitrarana, and she has her life purpose has been accomplished, and therefore a spontaneous discarding of worldly attachments has occurred. And so Madhavi focuses on doing what is needed and what is dharma. Going with the flow without imposing one's own desires, one's own ego, as it were, on life. This is what Madhavi has done. And one could say that in another story related to Yayati, we see that Puru, one of Yayati's sons, sacrifices his youth for Yayati. But in this case, this sacrifice is for Yayati's enjoyment of the world, and not very justifiable. But Madhavi's actions are even more justifiable than Puru's. Why? Because at this stage in life, Yayati has become a very good king, has become extremely pious, and for thousands of years, he has only been giving away, as a result of which he has nothing but Madhavi to give. So we see so many other ways in which to interpret the story, but we also see what Sahni has done with her story. Last year, I was teaching a course, and many of the students were very upset with the description of Madhavi's physical features. Repeatedly, her beauty is emphasized. And the first king that she meets says that she's full of auspicious marks, and he kind of describes her physically. And there's no embarrassment about this in the way it is narrated in the Mahabharata. But many who read the story today could, because they don't have the background of auspiciousness and so on, see it as a very objectifying description of Madhavi. But once we understand that these were all the descriptions were related to auspiciousness, and women, although considered impure for a variety of other reasons, are always, always auspicious. Then we realize why these descriptions are there in the story. Not only this, all these auspicious signs are related to women's duties, especially of birthing and mothering and so on. So, for instance, large hips, always related to how that would facilitate women giving birth and so on. And the idea here simply is that one of the duties of women in this world is to, give birth. Um, and there is no embarrassment here about it. In fact, the very point of a Hindu marriage is the production of progeny. And this progeny then performs karmas, takes the lineage forward, does good in the world, and satisfies the pitris, satisfies the deities above in heaven, and continues, keeps the world going. So this is the whole point of having children in the Hindu world, if you like. And so giving birth is just auspicious. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. Even the sexual act is auspicious. It's like a yajna. So this is something that modern interpretations have been missing out. And they tend to view this as a surrogacy, where Madhavi's womb was for hire and so on. Whereas what we see here is that motherhood is extremely fulfilling for Madhavi. Now, this fulfillment of motherhood through fulfillment through motherhood is something that we see in another story in the Mahabharata. This is about Bhangashvana. Bhangashvana, for a variety of reasons, has become a woman, and when he experiences motherly love, he sees nothing that is parallel to it in the entire world. He says that this experience of motherhood is so beautiful. When my children call me mother, I feel so satisfied and gratified that I have no desires left. Therefore, I won't become a man again. I will remain a woman, Bhangashwana says. And he rejects becoming a king. He just chooses to remain a mother and chooses to live in an ashram as a mother. But again, this whole motherhood angle is read um, as imposing patriarchy on women by feminist interpretations. But if we historicize the reason why motherhood became compulsory for women, I think today we can give women more options. We can give women the option of not marrying, not having children if they don't feel ready for it. And I think the compulsion about motherhood, marriage, and so on occurred at a time when women were generally not safe in society, and therefore they had to belong to a man in order to simply be safe, in order to simply be alive, and not be exploited in various ways by others in society. But when women are safe and free, and independent financially as well, the way today they are, their options increase. So I think the lesson for us is that we must focus on making contemporary society as safe as possible for women. Um, but the most interesting aspect of the Madhvi story is that she is a Putrika. And there's really only one scholar who notes this aspect of the story, which is Simon Broadbeck. And in the Mahabharata, we see another Putrika, Chitrangada. She's a northeastern princess whom Arjuna marries. And even to this day, there are northeastern communities that are matrilineal, which makes me think that this entire Putrika model of womanhood was present. It was real and has continued to this day, and has a strong connection to matrimony, to places where matrimony was practiced in India. So in the Dharmashastras, a Putrika is a daughter whose son is regarded as the heir to the father. So generally, both sons and daughters are seen as delivering their parents from hell, put being the word for it. In this case, because there are no sons that a father can have, the daughter's son is considered as one's own son, and usually she even lives with the father. The daughter's husband also cohabits with them. but she is the boss. She, like Chitrangada, who was the queen of her country, the Putrika is someone who inherits the property, just like it happens in matrimony. And she's the one who's, doing the business. She's almost like an entrepreneur there, continuing whatever the father was doing. So, if so, the idea here is that if one has no son, then the daughter's son is as good as one. She herself can be like a son as well, and take over businesses and if a kshatriya, become a regent queen and so on. And some scholars have viewed putrikas to be actions undertaken in apat dharma, but I'm not sure that this is accurate. In the Dharma Shastras that I have read, and from what I remember, I don't think that this comes under apat dharma. This simply comes under the clause that when you don't have a son, when you are unable to, have a son, but have a daughter, then this is what kicks in. This kind of rule kicks in. And Manu forbids marrying a girl with no brothers because this Putrika rule comes into effect. But then there have always been men who have, also married such women, Arjuna being a case in point. But Arjuna, because his brothers were waiting for him and so on, places a condition in turn and says that I'll be here with you for an year, no more, or something like that, maybe 1 year, I don't remember. So that's a condition he places, and then he marries Chitrangada. Uh, so what we see here is Madhavi's spiritual powers are no less than a son's. She's as good as any sannyasi. Her powers are probably only greater than any son's, so to speak. So while Broadbeck recognizes that Madhavi is a putrika, what he doesn't recognize is that Savitri. Sorry, hold on. What what he does is he sees Savitri also as a putrika, uh, but someone who shifts from being a putrika to a pativrata. But I'm not able to understand this very well because within the rules of Stri Dharma, one never abandons the natal household, really. That's not true. And this is given in the Uma Maheshwara Samvada. It's possible that the Pativrata favors the husband's household first or more, but it's not that she ever abandons really or disfavors the natal household. So this is part of the rules that surround Sri Dharma. So I don't see this shift that Savitri was once a Putrika and then became a Pativrata and so on. And instead, what I'm seeing in Madhavi's story is a kind of flexibility. She's a putrika and a pativrata for the time that she is with these kings. And then when she gives her punya again to Yayati, again she's a putrika, but at this point in time she's an ascetic. So I'm seeing her move seamlessly, as it were, between various varna dharmas and various Stri Dharma models that are available to her. So what this shows, the whole Putrika model, what it shows is that it's not a question of capability in the Hindu world. It's never that women are incapable of entrepreneurial action. They are. um, if the situation arises, they can always go ahead and do this, whether or not there is a brother in because Yayati does have many other sons, but she still functions like a putrika. Madhavi still functions like a putrika, quite literally in giving her punya, in doing so many things for Yayati's sake. So what I'm seeing is that the Stri Dharma, which is a model of womanhood, which is recommended for women, is recommended is the recommended model, not the only model available to her. It's to women. It's the recommended model because it accommodates her biological cycle of birthing, nurturing, and so on better. But it is certainly not the only model available to her. in case she doesn't want to marry, doesn't want to marry and remain with her father, she can do so as a putrika. So the putrika system was used whenever it was necessary in a mainstream manner, um, to obtain progeny and to continue lineages. So we might also think that Madhavi actually became a river, and rivers are purifiers. A river called Drishtadvati, which is mentioned in the Vedas. So what we actually see then is that patrilineal and matrilineal coexist. This is under theorized by scholars and needs so much more attention. We see the matrilineal system in Kerala and the Northeast, and there is usually a karta here, who's instated in order to perform rituals, but it's quite literally the daughter who is the boss, and arghyas are offered to the female lineage in this system. Now, the feminist interpretations also have a lot of problem with Vishwamitra's desire, but this is a misunderstanding of the sannyasi hood, I think, because in another presentation on sannyasis, I showed that sexual desire after sannyasa was not a problem. What was the problem? What was the problem was a compulsive gratification of sexual desire. That was only the point here in the sannyasa tradition. The one other thing I want to point out, and I keep pointing out to this, is that virginity and kanya are not the same in Vyasa's story. Here in Sahni's story, that happens. It's not only virginity that she regains, but also her beauty, and that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is that she's regaining her purity. Why? Why is she doing this? I have a feeling that this is to do entirely with the 11-day sutaka that is attached to women after the birthing process. So when she becomes pure again, when she becomes a kanya again, what is happening is that the impurities associated are washed away, and she is good as new, with no scarring of the laborious process of birth and so on, which is also why she's not traumatized at all in Vyasa's depiction. So this pure birth or pure birthing is something that is very important in the Indian world. We see this in the Panchamaha concept as well. So this is not really about virginity. And luckily for us, Chaturvedi Badrinath is one rare scholar who recognizes this, that virginity here is to do more with the mind and not with the body. But feminist interpretations view this as, the typical breakage of the hymen and fidelity and so on. And so to them, Madhavi's story appears very, very distressing. So again, like I said, the seamless movement that Madhavi displays between various Varna dharmas and the dharmas of women is so important. And I think it's important for contemporary times as well, because today women can choose to be wives, mothers, and have careers. What would be needed is just some adjustment from others around them in order to enable them to have this. So what I want to simply point out here is that there is nothing in Hindu tradition that suggests that women cannot multitask, that women cannot move across womenhood models like Stri Dharma, like Pativratahood, or being a Putrika where she has enormous control and power over property and business and whatnot. So I see Savitri also as moving between Putrika and Sridharma models. So even when Yama gives her 3 boons, what is happening is that although she prioritizes her parents-in-laws, she does not abandon her natal family. Her one of her boons is that her father have 100 sons. So she's solving so many problems in one go, and we cannot forget the beauty of what Savitri is doing here. Um, So this is what I would take from Madhavi's story, that women somehow seamlessly are moving across varnas, across various womanhood models that are available to them, and that they can do this if they want to. There's nothing stopping them. They only have to be safe in the process, and assuring that safety is the job of the rest of the society. If that safety is not given to her, then of course, she cannot pursue her career like she wants. But often, if we are lucky, we find supportive husbands, supportive fathers who will
Sushumna,
enable us.
are you coming to the
Yes, this
conclusion?
is the last slide.
Mhm.
So to sum up, the trend that we see in modern theater in bringing ancient characters to life is spread across literary writing. So we not only have Sahni's Madhavi, we also have Snehalata Reddy's Sita, another play where similar things are done to Sita's story. Then we have Vaidehi's Shakuntalayondike Ondu Aparahna, which is also a dialogue with Shakuntala. We have Karve's Yuganta. We have many Karnad's plays that also go into the past, take out myths out of their context, and distort the myths themselves in the process, not reading them for the power that they are giving to women, and instead creating victims in the process. So Vyasa's inclusionary project, Vyasa's feminism is something that we cannot not see in Madhavi's story. And like I said, Vyasa is not the masculinist that feminists read him to be. His project is one of inclusion, and he very systematically develops in the Mahabharata many womanhood models. He gives credence to each kind of womanhood model, and often stages dvandvas between the dharmas of women and other dharmas, just in order to create that discussion that is so needed. He gives access to everyone through the Mahabharata. I want to mention two different readings of Madhavi. One is by Lavanya Sahni, and she does not do this. She does not do what typical feminist interpretations do. So, if anybody is interested in a different kind of reading of Madhavi, they should go read Sahni's understanding of Madhavi. And I have to thank Shivakumar for reminding me that Arya has a very beautiful story on Madhavi by Madhurima Devi Rasi. I just read it yesterday. It's extremely beautiful. She addresses so many of the things that I've addressed today, except for the Putrika angle. She pretty much says exactly what I wanted to say today. So those who are interested should absolutely read Arya. Here's where I want to end my presentation. Thank you, Nagraj sir. Any questions?
Namaste. Right. There is one question by one Sunil Kumar. Contemporary feminists may still critique the Vyasa narrative as perpetuating the patriarchy, as it has been written by a male from the masculine gaze and not an august stage in the dharmic worldview. What would be your view?
I would say no. By showing Savitri and Madhavi as fully capable of behaving like sons, I think Vyasa has done the exact opposite of what feminists would accuse him of. He has shown that there is really no difference between sons and daughters, and that when one doesn't have sons, daughters will do the same things that sons are doing, which is give arghya, give their punya, transfer merit, and so on. So that would be my.
Okay. So, just for the benefit of the audience, Arya that Sushumna ji was mentioning is an anthology of women stories published by Indica. Shivakumar is the general editor of the Arya anthology. You may get a copy from Indica. And Vemsani ji is also an Indica associated historian working in United States. Uh, we may get access to our books through us through Indica. We'll be able to add. Pramshuji is saying Pramshuji in the from the panel itself. Galava's character is further explored in many stories, including Vamana Purana in the story of Vishwakarma's daughters and birth of Nala, the bridge maker. This is a comment, this is just an observation.